what is going on with these UFC cards recently? Seriously, like last week's main event was Steve Garcia versus David Onama. This week we've got Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown. Clearly the UFC is just like running out the clock with their ESPN contract, stuffing these Apex cards with like whoever they can and saving their real fights for once Paramount starts. But I mean, the good thing is, in a few months, it's going to be the best time ever to be a UFC fan. But right now, in between these pay-per-views, it's like we're hoping for fixed fights. We're hoping for drama or some weird storylines to come out of the events because other than that, you're just going to get nothing. Like you're going to get literally there's a number 10 guy versus like a number 8 guy with no stakes on the fight whatsoever, promoted like absolute trash from the UFC. No one's caring about it other than the hardcore fans. So, you know, like whatever. Literally, it's like 2 more months until we get to Paramount. So, whatever, right? Anyway, let's break down the card. All right, let's start with the main event, Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown. Guys, I'm praying that Randy Brown can just eliminate Gabriel Bonfim out of the entire welterweight picture here and avenge the loss of Wonderboy Thompson. That's not really a loss, okay? Gabriel Bonfim's record of 18-1 should realistically be 17-2 because he got pieced up his entire fight with Wonderboy. Wonderboy rocked him multiple times, and all that Gabriel Bonfim did in response was check some leg kicks to cause some bleeding on the shin of Wonderboy and hold him up against the fence for control time that eventually got him like the worst split decision victory you've ever seen. So I'm hoping that Randy Brown can finish Gabriel Bonfim here. He's got the skills to do it on the feet. He has that like striking ability. Gabriel Bonfim's striking is not very good, but Gabriel Bonfim is a big submission threat. You know, he finishes 72% of his fights by submission. He also usually gets about 4 takedowns every 15 minutes. So in a 5-round fight, the chances are Randy Brown's going to spend a lot of time on his back. Randy Brown does have good takedown defense, 73%. And Gabriel Bonfim, you know, his takedowns weren't that great. Like, he wasn't able to take Wonderboy down and impose his will on him grappling-wise or anything like that. So I have a feeling that Gabriel Bonfim's record is a little bit padded from weaker competition. If you look at their records, Gabriel Bonfim has spent relatively a lot less time in the UFC than Randy Brown has, right? So he's on a 3-fight win streak, you know, one robbed Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, beat Chaos Williams by a Das choke, but that's not that impressive. Beat Anže Lusa by decision, but also not really that impressive from the perspective of grappling. Like Anže Lusa, he fought on the Contender Series against JDM. It was mostly a striking fight. There was no takedown threat whatsoever, right? So, you know, none of these guys are really grapplers. Lost to Nicholas Dalby, who Randy Brown has actually beaten. Beat Trevin Giles, which is a decent win. Munir Lazez, and then we start getting into like Contender Series and regional fights and all of this type of stuff, right? So that's really the extent of Gabriel Bonfim's record. If we look at Randy Brown, totally different story. He won his last fight against Nicholas Dalby. Right hook, put him out. Lost to Brian Battle in a split decision. Brian Battle's a good fighter. Beat Elizeu Zaleski. Beat Muslim Salikhov, which is a good win. Muslim Salikhov's not really a grappler, even though you would think so based on the surname. Beat Wellington Turman. Lost in a grappling fight to Rene Souza, but that doesn't really matter. Lost to Jack Della Maddalena. Again, that's not really relevant. Jack Della Maddalena is not a grappler. Beat Francisco Trinaldo, Chaos Williams, Jared Gooden, Alex Oliveira. Lost to Vicente Luque, but like prime Vicente Luque back in 2020. Beat Warley Alves, who people forget, man. Warley Alves actually beat Colby Covington. Beat Brian Barberena, Mickey Gall, Brian Camozzi. Lost to Nico Price, lost to Bilal Muhammad, you know, but he's, again, I'm sure those were huge learning experiences fighting grapplers. This guy's been fighting since he was 6-0 back in 2016 in the UFC, right? So he has so much high-level competition experience for Randy Brown as opposed to Gabriel Bonfim, who's relatively new. And that's why I think that those stats about like the takedown averages aren't going to be as relevant here. I don't see Gabriel Bonfim being able to take Randy Brown as frequently. Randy Brown's going to get taken down. He's probably going to spend some time on his back. He's going to spend a lot of time against the cage if Gabriel Bonfim's previous fights have shown us anything, especially if Gabriel Bonfim can't get anything going with the striking. He's just going to pray that he can ride out the fight. This could be very boring if Randy Brown can't get off the cage. But I think that Randy Brown's going to be able to find the openings. I think there's enough tape on Gabriel Bonfim. I think that he saw that fight with Wonderboy. He's going to know how to land the strikes. And I'm guessing that Randy Brown's going to finish Gabriel Bonfim in round 4. Like TKO. Gabriel Bonfim's going to start getting tired, leave himself open, get dropped pretty badly, and Randy Brown's going to finish up with a few more strikes. That's how I see this going. Fuck, the UFC website is so bad. Moving on to Matt Schnell versus Joseph Morales. This, guys, is going to be... Moving on to Matt Schnell versus Joseph Morales. The biggest co-main event of the year, boys. Seriously. No, but realistically, guys, this is going to be the easiest fight to choose ever. Joseph Morales is going to win by decision. No shot. Like, look at this. So, if you look at Matt Schnell's record recently, he has won 2 out of his last 7 fights against Jimmy Flick and Sumadeji. Lost to Cody Durden, Steve Erceg, Mateus Nicolau, Brandon Royval, and I guess the Christian Guzman fight was technically a grappling competition. But 2 out of his last 6 MMA fights is what he's won. If we compare that with Joseph Morales is on a 6-fight win streak, 2 of those coming out of the Ultimate Fighter. He used to fight in the UFC. His losses were to Davison Figueiredo and Eric Shelton. Decent losses. Goes back to the regionals, gains a bunch of skills, comes back, is on a huge tear, lots of confidence. This is a flyweight bout. Both guys don't have huge finishing potential. They do have submissions, but I guess that with both of them having decent grappling, it's probably going to cancel each other out a lot more. Matt Schnell does throw a lot more volume, so you could potentially see a win coming from that. But the grappling is a lot better on Joseph Morales' side. He lands more takedowns per fight. He goes for more submissions. I see him probably controlling a lot more of the top position, and this being like a relatively uninteresting flyweight fight. Moving on to Muslim Salikhov versus Uros Medic. I'm going with Muslim Salikhov on this one. I think he's going to win by finish. I think this is going to be a really fun fight between 2 guys that you would think are grapplers, but actually overwhelmingly like to finish their opponents on the feet. Muslim Salikhov has a 68% KO TKO rate, whereas Uros Medic has a 100% finish rate, with 82% being KOs or TKOs, and then the other 18% being submissions, obviously, right? Both guys throw a lot of volume. Uros Medic throws about 5.5 strikes per minute. Muslim Salikhov throws about 3.5, but he throws a lot of heat in his punches. If we look at their records, like Muslim Salikhov, his most recent fight was against Carlos Leal, where Carlos Leal came out super bat out of hell crazy, like really just trying to throw everything that he could right out of the gate. And 42 seconds in, Muslim Salikhov lands a beautiful counter right hook that puts him down. His fight before that won with a spinning wheel kick in round 1. A split decision against Santiago Ponzinibbio before that, but that, Santiago Ponzinibbio is good. He lost to Randy Brown, who's in the main event, by a straight right. Lost to Nicholas Dalby. But, he's on a 3-fight win streak. I think he's got good confidence. He is a bit old. He's 41 years old, and he sort of looks it, right? He looks like he would, beat up any old unk at the barbecue in reality, and he probably would. The king of kung fu, Muslim Salikhov. Uros Medic, on the other hand, he's a little bit more green, 9-2. He's a lot younger, 32 years old, so he's in his physical prime. But he's on a bit of like a hot and cold, win-loss streak, right? So he's been in the UFC for a little bit now. Beat Alon Cruz, lost to Jalen Turner, beat Omar Morales, beat Matthew Semmelsberger, lost to Miktabek Oralbai by neck crank, beat Tim Means. It's a decent win. Lost to Punahele Soriano, beat Gulbert Urbina, but, lost, win. I see this being a loss as well. I just think that Muslim Salikhov is on too much of a good streak, too much confidence. He is on the tail end of his career, but I don't see Uros Medic being the guy that's going to really retire Muslim Salikhov right now. So I'm going with Muslim Salikhov by a first-round knockout here. Moving on to Chris Padilla versus Ismael Bonfim, who has to be Gabriel Bonfim's brother or cousin or something like that. Otherwise, this is just crazy coincidence. But I'm going with Chris Padilla here, guys, and I think it's going to be really easy, honestly. I think that the Bonfim family are a bunch of frauds. I think they're both going to lose on this card. If we look at their records, this just tells itself, right? Chris Padilla's on a 6-fight win streak. I know that not all of that is in the UFC, right? But he beat Jai Herbert, beat Rong Zhu. Those are 2 decent wins. And then James Lyontop, Justin James, Sarah Manisian, LJ Portes, this is starting to be on the regional scene here. Whereas when we look at like Ismael Bonfim, yeah, again, the Bonfim guys, they look like they would be amazing fighters, but look at this record. Lost to Nazim Salikhov at the end of round 1, doctor stoppage. Beat Vince Pichel. Lost to Benoit Saint Denis. Beat Terrence McKinney. But Terrence McKinney's like a 50-50 fighter, right? Beat Nariman Abbasov on the Contender Series to get in. And other than that, he's, all regional fights as well. So I just see this going to Chris Padilla mostly because of this momentum. 6-fight win streak is very good. When we look at the numbers, these guys are fairly even in how they fight. Half of their fights finish by KO or TKO, submission about 20 to 30% of the time, and the rest by decision. From an output perspective, Ismael Bonfim throws like almost 6 strikes per minute, whereas Chris Padilla throws about 4. But his striking defense is significantly... Ismael Bonfim's striking defense is actually really good, 70%. So if this stays striking, that could be a real problem for Chris Padilla, but it looks like Chris Padilla's grappling is a bit better. He shoots for more takedowns, same amount of takedown accuracy, but has 100% takedown defense. Ismael Bonfim is that Brazilian wrestler guy, so I don't know. This could be hard. Maybe I'm wrong on this. I'm going to go with Chris Padilla via decision. I think that he's going to... Decision seems like a dumb bet, Royce. I'm going to go with Chris Padilla by decision. I think he's going to outstrike Ismael Bonfim. This is higher level competition. You're not going to knock out absolutely everybody. I think he's going to find some openings, land the bigger shots on Bonfim. Bonfim's going to be, coming in, being more aggressive, throwing more strikes. But I have a feeling that Padilla is going to pick better shots, land better on Bonfim, show more high damage or like heavy significant strike moments in the rounds. And in the 3-round fight, I'm seeing Chris Padilla get this by decision. Moving on to Ricky Simón versus Hani Barcelos. This is an interesting fight. I'm going with Hani Barcelos via decision, and I think that's just coming down to the fight IQ and the skill set of Hani. Ricky Simón is an idiot. I'm sorry, he's just an idiot. Like we could have like a joint channel of like Big Dumb Harry and Big Dumb Ricky, no problem, right? Like Ricky Simón is one of those guys that has a ton of physical ability and potential, but no brain. I'm sorry, Ricky, but like he was on a tear. He was looking really good. He's sort of the lineal champion. He actually beat Merab Dvalishvili, but when we look at his record, Ricky Simón, it's just a nightmare, right? So, he's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Karen Smotherman and Javid Basharat. But before that, 4-fight loss streak. Vinicius Oliveira grappling against Zhao Miao. Mario Bautista. Song Yadong got knocked out in round 5. He was on a bit of a tear before that. Jack Shaw, Rafael Assunção, Brian Kelleher, Gaetano Pereiro, Ray Borg. Lost to Rob Font, lost to Uriah Faber. Those are, good fighters. Beat Rani Yahya, beat Montel Jackson, beat Merab Dvalishvili. Like, he's been around. This guy's good. He's got some really good wins under his belt, but a lot of that is physicality. The Merab win was a weird one where Merab sort of like threw it away right at the end. Whereas Hani Barcelos, he's, on some good wins. He beat Cody Garbrandt, he beat Peyton Talbot, beat Christian Quinones. Lost to Kyler Phillips, lost to Umar Nurmagomedov, but I mean, everybody loses to Umar unless you're Merab, right? Beat Trevin Jones, lost to Victor Henry, lost to Timur. So, he's had some times in his career where he wasn't doing as well, but beat Khalid Taha, beat Said Nurmagomedov, like Chris Gutierrez. He's been around a long time as well, and I just think with the 3-fight win streak that he's on and the fight IQ that he has, I see Ricky Simón making some really dumb decisions in this fight. I don't know how it's going to get finished, though. I think that's the thing. I think this is going to finish by TKO, probably in round 2. Like, I see it being a close fight in round one. Ricky Simone's looking really good in the sense that he's, strong and going for some takedowns. He lands about 5 takedowns every 15 minutes, and his takedown accuracy is 43%. So he's shooting all the time. He's going to be shooting a lot of takedowns. Raoni Barcelos' takedown defense is great, 85%. So he's going to stuff a lot of that in the first round. This is going to tire Ricky out a little bit. Second round, he's going to come in wanting to actually do more. Raoni Barcelos is going to find an opening to hit him, land really bad, viciously. I see Ricky Simone just, because he does leave himself open, getting dropped. And then Raoni Barcelos is going to finish up with some ongoing strikes, maybe even like seal in a choke or something like that. I know that he only finishes about 15% of his fights by submission, but I could see it happening. So I'm going with Raoni Barcelos by KO TKO in the second round, beating Ricky Simone. Moving on to the final, or the first fight of the prelims, Christian Leroy Duncan versus Marco Tulio. This is a pick'em fight, guys. There's a lot of Brazilian fighters on this card. These guys both like to finish their fights by KO or TKO. It's going to be a good swang and bang middleweight bout. Marco Tulio throws a lot, 7.5 strikes per minute. Christian Leroy about 5 strikes per minute. Both land a good amount of their strikes, about 60%, and they don't absorb too many either. Like 2.5 to 3 strikes absorbed per minute, 50 to 60% striking defense. So this is going to be a good middleweight striking fight. Neither guy cares about grappling that much. This is all going to be on the feet. When we look at their records, Marco Tulio is doing really well. He's on a huge streak right now. Like only one loss to Alexandre Silva, 7 years ago. Since then, had a bunch of fights on the regional scene. One is contender series fight against Yusri Belgariao. Didn't end up getting on to the UFC. Had another contender fight that he won. And then he's been in the UFC for 2 fights. Beat Ihor Potieria and Trezian Gore. So Trezian Gore is a decent win. Whereas Christian Leroy Duncan, he's been around for a little longer in the UFC. Beat Eric Anders. Beat Andrei Puliev. Lost to Gregory Rodriguez, but Gregory Rodriguez is a good fighter, crafty vet man, as Lucas Tracy, RIP, would say. Beat Claudio Ribeiro, beat Dennis Tulilin, lost to Armin Petrosian, beat Dusko Todorovic, but that's a lot of good UFC experience. And then had a bunch of amateur fights as well, like 22 amateur bouts, 17-5 before he became a pro. So I think that Christian Leroy Duncan just has the experience here. This is hard, man. Oh, this is hard. I really do think that this is a pick'em fight. Oh, I'm gonna. Oh man, who do I go with here? Christian Leroy Duncan, longer reach, he's taller. Marco Tulio is going to be more aggressive, throwing more output. I see Christian Leroy Duncan winning this by first round KO. What I see is Marco Tulio being way more aggressive, trying to close the distance. Both guys are very aggressive and have a lot of faith in their hands. They're going to be throwing a lot of strikes, but I think Christian Leroy Duncan is going to be a little bit more precise with his strikes. He has that high-level UFC experience. He throws less shots, but he's got the range to stay out of distance and punish Marco Tulio when he comes in. So that's how I see this happening. Marco Tulio is going to come in super aggressive, maybe land a couple of shots, but as Christian Leroy Duncan figures out that timing and is able to stay out of the way, when Marco Tulio overextends, he's going to get caught probably with like a really strong straight right. That's what I see happening. Anyway, this is it, guys. The most entertaining fight card of the year. We're at the end of the year. We're almost done with these UFC on ESPN Apex cards that they're shoving down our throat, and we're going to have Paramount Paradise coming soon. So if you like this, could you do me a favor and like the video? And other than that, if you have stuff that you want to talk about, let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more of this, subscribe. Or I'll find you and kill you. I'm an idiot.